Early morning exploration on this last day before I leave, and we'll go down this alley instead of when we came out that way into Trifon Square. Each of these squares has a name. Okay, where we've come is from 49 and 43, and then that blue dot off to the right, down between 49 and 48 to 37. Trug Ode Brasner, or whatever it is. Some of the names of these squares are Arm Square, Flower Square, Square, Milk Square, Cinema Square, but I can't find a ready source for translating which is which. This apparently is the palace of the Beskuca family. These are rather plain looking buildings. They might have been far more interesting on the inside. This is the palace of the Pima family, 17th century. I don't think they're related to the Pima Indian family of Arizona, but this is an impressive building in the sense of what's outside and the detail on the windows and the balcony and this substantial, whatever you want to call it, entry area with the two large dome or arches. Now, whether they were built after the fact, I don't know. At least of what remains, that first palace, the palace of the Beskuca family, 13th to 18th century, is pretty mild in comparison. See the very classy way that these restaurants inside these old buildings have been done. Truly designed to appeal to the people on the cruise ships. And it's a good counterpoint to the interesting old town look. Here we're at another austere building, except for this rather grandiose entryway. This is the palace of the Beskuca family, 15th to 18th century. Think of that. Think of your family living here, dominating for 300 years. No doubt this is St. Mark, the flying lion. Well, that's the symbol for St. Mark. He really wasn't flying lion. And now we're arrived at the 44, which is just near that actually, and then we'll exit to the left out through this entrance where number 1 is, and that's the west gate. I didn't spend much time down through here, but it's one of the major squares in the town. There's the original wall behind us. There's the main entrance. I'll wander up this little small entryway just to see what's there, and then work my way back down through here as I slice and dice this eastern part of the town. Isn't this a beautiful walkway? I often pass small, but I'm sure very richly appointed hotels along these narrow streets. Somewhat reminiscent of Venice, except it seemed to me Venice always seems more authentic. Certainly an inviting corridor of shops. We make a tight little angle through a small restaurant area into the square we recognize with that very novel mechanical pump. So here we'll turn left towards the north, and we have to migrate quickly back to get to an area we haven't been in yesterday morning. Here you can recognize this old church and the basilica behind it to the left. So we'll take a left here. Correction, we'll go across here and take a left there and try and get more to the east and the west. I don't imagine this fixture is very old, but what it looks like is a flag holder. We did not go down here, although the basilica, the old basilica, is back in there. This building restored on the outside. Cities, these towns is so alluring. Somewhere in here we're in near the remains of the Dominican monastery, but also, as you can see, we're next to a relatively newly restored church. St. Clair, built in the 18th century, and it's open, so we might take a glance inside. I suspect that this boarded up door would take us back into that old basilica ruin. It's a very pretty old church, isn't it? Here, another version of the St. Mark icon. You wonder if the purpose of this arch isn't simply to mutually support both buildings. In the morning, you sense the probably intimate camaraderie between the locals when they have these peaceful moments to themselves. As I looked in a door down a hallway a few minutes ago, and you could see that there was a little area that formed a respite for the people who lived there. A pretty little room with greenery and nice table to sit at, and someplace they could escape. Now where we are right now is at the square where 54 is. You'll see a tree to the left. There's that tree. And to our right is this church and concert hall, apparently. And then way down further to our right, you can see this square, Treg or Dieza, which means ordinance. We're trying to move from left to right at 54. This is not be the church. It's an abandoned building, at least in the upper 2 floors. This is rather simple, somewhat sequestered, it seems like, square. And its main attraction, this beautiful tree. Maybe our little old lady of the Angels Church from the 17th century. Guess again, this is a church of St. Michael, 19th to 14th century, and a lapidarium, which I think is off here to the right. Apparently associated with it or under it is an older early Christian basilica of the 6th century. We can see, I think I've looked at these already before, but the remains of sculpture and stonework that was in this building, in this city elsewhere. Another classic entryway. You can see we've just come full circle, which is fine. We come back to this large square where the main west gate or the sea gate is. So now we'll continue to the right. On the back side of this clock tower and slice and dice this direction. Here's the city gallery. Various chunks of stone, particularly the way that one is broken or molded or carved, and that sweeping curve for some reason. Toilet I've seen in this town. There's that large church that has the basilica to its left in the background there. More lawyer signs. Here's the kind of courtyard that I find lovely, although this one far more exposed to the tourist public than I would want. Seeing that back behind that door lies more with something in my keeping. Notice we're almost at the north limit because there's that wall. A pretty, a bit simple and not so terribly old doorway. As that these buildings I'll pan right now were palaces of the wealthy. But other than size, they seem somewhat understated, except for the balcony. Far more interesting, but still relatively understated. The house of pastry shop that sells primarily bread. They don't have their pastries out yet. This the Napoleon Theater, 1810, and it's now the Town Hall in 1904. Earlier theater of Napoleon. Sure that these people are extremely aware of when the cruise ship disgorges its money-carrying hordes. This is the Mali Hotel, again richly appointed in the wood that they use so extensively. That so complements in a luxurious way this stone. Looking back up the mountain, of course, over that church that has the basilica to its left. Pastry shop brusquely advised me they open at 8. I'm sure they don't need me. 8 o'clock is no doubt the magic hour for the cruise ship. It occurred to me that this ship may have as much or more square footage of deck space, interior, exterior, than this old town has.